Friday comes with beautiful weather, something others crave for, and we're grateful for it on this side of the divide. Wherever you're watching the Morning Brief from, good morning, welcome. It's your perfect morning starter on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
Live from Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, I am Kelly Giga. It's the TGIF edition of the show, and sometimes I'm just about to pinch myself and say, oh, it's Friday. But then again, I remember that, you know what, I'm a journalist. But it's Friday, Saturday,
Friday too.
Weekends. Oh,
your shoes, yeah.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's Friday, so we have to just kind of step down a bit and see how we can look Friday, you know. The job sometimes can be very serious. I mean, I was just on the phone with a PR person, Bukola, just a few minutes before the show, and she was saying, I thought I was in the office. I said, what? How do you journalists, do you guys sleep at all?
How do you do it?
How do you do it? But I mean, that's the job, right? So we're always here to serve you, we're always here to bring you up to speed with all of the latest events, developments happening here in Nigeria, the continent, and all around the world. That's why we're here. That's why we're always here. I would always love to be a broadcast journalist any day, anytime. Because I'm producing something, my program Amazing Africans as well. And one of I interviewed with this captain, and then she was telling me I work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And I was like, what? So what am I doing in broadcast journalism? 2 weeks on,
like
2 weeks off.
Like someone would say, see groove.
As in, and then, because I asked her a question around work-life balance, and she goes, I work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So technically in a month, I work about 6 months in a year. And then I have to go for other trainings and all of that. I'm like, who sends me to this broadcast journalism in the first place?
Yes, that would be the goal for a couple of years if we do better planning, you know, for early retirement. But for journalists, we're part of what we call essential staff in this country. And so we don't have public holidays, and that's the life of the journalist. But hey, it's the best job in the world. Speaking of which, let's begin our job today, Kelly.
Absolutely.
Indeed, and of course, the Senate has referred the considerations of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill to a 7-man committee to distill the views of the Nigerian Senate and report back to it in a couple of weeks. Let's look at the outlook of those who are on that committee. Of course, it's going to be led by the senator from Ondo State, Ani Agbomire, and other members of that committee are Senator Adams Oshomole, Senator Tony Nwoye, and quite a number of other members. Of course, Senator Ni Adegbomire is the Chairman Senate Committee on Human Rights and Legal Matters. And according to the Senate President, he said the committee was set up to synthesize lawmakers' views and address outstanding concerns on the proposed amendments. And the panel was mandated to contribute, galvanize, and distill the opinion of senators on the bill. Kelly.
Well, Bukola, I mean, we gave this a mention yesterday. Again, shout out to Senator Abdul Ningi. I do not know you personally, but when I see you in the Senate making these submissions, I think he has a way of just telling me that, you know what, there's some sort of hope for this country. Yes, you're in the opposition, but I like the fact that you're able to speak up and speak out about some of the concerns of this country and you know, bring to light some of these issues of national interest. So again, you see him on your screen there yesterday, was really very vocal about the need for us to take this seriously, this issue of electronic transmission, or this issue of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. I mean, we had an elections in 2023. We had to wait, we had to dilly-dally, we had to drag and drag and drag and drag until barely 1 year to the 2027 elections. That's when we are now beginning to set up committees. That's when we are now, and you know how these politicians work. When it's time to, some bills will go through some sort of expedited process or phase, you know, while some, you know, well, let's set the committee, let's do this. So they will drag and drag and drag until, you know, sometimes Nigerians will even just forget about it, and then before you know it, somehow we just hear that it's been passed, and then the details of it, Nigerians may not have the time to consume it and all of that. So I think it's something we have to quickly do, Mr. Senate President and your colleagues in the House. These are not things to play politics with. Yesterday, I saw a video where Rauf Aregbesola of the ADC, now former governor of Osun State and former interior minister, was speaking about the fact that if the elections is free and fair in 2027, he can assure Nigerians that the ADC is going to win the elections. That he was saying that to his right, I think I saw, to his left was Rotimi Amechi. I'm trying to remember who he had to his right in that. Okay, he had the governor of Cross River, former governor of Cross River, Lee Elimoke, and some other high-profile personalities yesterday speaking somewhere at a conference. So I think the APC leadership or ruling government, you know, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government would need to sort of, because Nigerians have not recovered from the last elections. There are still a lot of concerns. There are still a lot of gray areas. So why don't you do what you need to do? I mean, let's test the waters. You've promised, you've made promises and said, you know what, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. So I think we have to quickly put this to rest, because it still has to go back to the president to give his assent, and then before we can move on. But I think it's something that we should not play politics with, guys.
Kelly, you're right on the money, and I'm on all fours with you on the point about this being needless foot dragging on a subject that is of national importance. And it reminds me of what, Dr. Ibuke said during the newspaper review yesterday, when we talked about how, the Senate, deliberated on the 2025 bombings, and he said, it's just grandstanding. We're going to see very little result come out of this planned executive briefing on the significant event of December 25, 2025. Of course, that would be the airstrikes, the U.S. airstrike in Sokoto State. Now, in line with the old Electoral Act, if the Senate does not conclude hearing on this very important Electoral Act Amendment Bill, the deadline for which INEC is going to release the election timetable for 2027 would be February 2026. I believe that I have that correctly. And so if the Senate is still foot dragging on what should be the expeditious hearing of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, then the ship may sail, on the need for all efforts to, be galvanized and ensure that it is passed, and then we get executive assent, and then it becomes law. And there are very transformative items of proposal on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Early voting that would see Kelly finally be able to, go exercise his franchise. I wonder when last he voted, he got the time to vote. Oh my word. Because on election days, he's out there reporting. Yeah. There are other items. INEC's powers to review itself on election results. There is also the appointment of the commission boss, which is currently powers deposited in the executive. Other transformative bills, for instance, diaspora voting. The women advocates are there also urging expeditious passage of special seats, legislative seats for women. So very important items. And we know that when there is political will, both chambers of the National Assembly can indeed, grant expeditious hearing to matters of urgent importance. And we've seen it in the National Anthem Bill of 2024, I believe, that became law in a matter of a week or 2 weeks. We've seen it in how,
very speedy process.
Passage was granted to the tax reform bills that became law last year, and, implementation is underway already from January 1, 2026. So it can be done. Committees are just grandstanding, and very little come out. Very little comes out of committees, as we have, known the history of this country to be. More often than not, details are passed, are left under the carpet, and there are no results. And so I doubt very much that Nigerians are convinced or persuaded about the need for this special committee to consider the proposals on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. February is upon us already, and we hope that the Senate gets the message. Speaking of messages, the National Association of Resident Doctors has, granted extended 4 weeks ultimatum to the federal government. Again,
another deadline for the government.
Yeah.
We're totally out of time, but I mean, there we go again. The doctors giving the government a deadline else they would get to strike. Look, we have barely 10,000 resident doctors. For a country with around 250 million, some would say, Nigerians, I think we have leaders that should try and pretend to be responsible for once. Let me put it that way. Pretend to be responsible for once. Because the average Nigerian cannot travel abroad for medical checkups that you do on perhaps weekly and monthly basis. The former president, God bless his soul, some would argue, don't even say that, but President
London was his traditional home.
London was.
For healthcare.
Yes, and the current president
France.
now, France. As a matter of fact, I was just checking out the list of countries that Mr. President has visited in the last 2 years. He has visited about 24 countries of the world across about 5 continents or regions, 24 in about 2 years. Some of those countries like France, I mean, we've had recurrent visits for Mr. President. So we need to pay attention to our health care because, as I said, the average Nigerian cannot afford these bills. If you also consider the fact that there is inflation and medicines, there was a time when we were buying paracetamol, for instance, for maybe 20 naira, 50 naira. That's not the case anymore because of the inflation, because of the exchange rate and all of that. So I think we have to pay attention to our doctors and their demands. We have lost a number of doctors who have had to japa, a huge number of them. I have friends who were in school together who are in the UK now practicing. And one of those times when I had a conversation some years ago with one of them, he said, Kelly, look, we're not asking for much. We just want an environment to thrive. The things that we're taught in school, let us see it in the hospitals when we have to practice. We don't have to keep dreaming it until we have. Some of them had to see some of those equipment or environments when they had to go abroad before they could see some of these facilities and infrastructure. All they had heard was seeing it in books, reading about it and being taught, but until they had to travel outside. I mean, yes, we've been celebrating robotic surgeries, for instance, in Nigeria now, and that success story is just barely about a year or 2 old, when nations around the world have been talking about robotic surgeries for like 10 years, some 15 years, and some of these facilities in the UK, Canada, and Europe are being headed by Nigerians who schooled right here in Nigeria, prestigious universities, University of Ibadan, and all of that, OAU and all of that. So I think we have to do better. We have to pay attention to these things. We know how you politicians, you know how when you have interest in things, you spend. But when it has to do with some things that perhaps does not directly concern you, you just, play around with it.
And what are the issues? Promotion and salary arrears, delayed non-payment of professional allowances provided for in the 2026 Appropriation Act. And I believe there's also the demand for recruitment of critical staff, following the brain drain that has seen the emptying of a lot of critical healthcare institutions. Who cooks a broth and doesn't partake in, the consumption of the broth? And that's what we see in continuous, medical tourism that is known only to the elite in this country. But there is indeed hope when we consider the gradual return of, some amazing professionals of Nigerians who are returning to, build the healthcare system. But we must ask questions of the sector-wide approach of the Federal Ministry of Health, which is championing partnership of all stakeholders in the health sector, the public health professionals, the private health professionals as well. So if it doesn't factor in the furtherance of the welfare and well-being, total well-being of the critical staff who power these healthcare institutions, then we're not talking about progress in the healthcare sector. We could also ask questions of our primary healthcare centers as well. I recall the last conversation we had with the Chairman House Committee on Healthcare Institutions, which has oversight responsibility on the reforms of the private health, primary healthcare institutions. Some states are recording progress, while some states are not recording progress. Of course, indeed, during that conversation, it was economical in telling us the states that are, for obvious reasons, that are not making progress. But the sector-wide approach reform initiative is yet to yield results in the areas of the personnel that drive the sector. And we hope that this message is not lost on the leadership of the Federal Ministry of Health. But hey, what do we have today?
Yes, let's quickly tell you that we get to talk the Awujale selection process. It's been shrouded in a lot of controversies, allegations and counter-allegations. We'll get some perspectives on the program this morning as we keep asking the big question, who will become the next Awujale? I mean, remember the former one who passed on, sadly, was on that throne for about 60 or 65 years now. The selection
65 years.
65 years. So that's what we're going to discuss this morning.
Yes.
What else?
Plus, the local government administration row in Osun State. Yesterday, we had a conversation with the Commissioner for Information in Osun State, but we're unable to exhaust all of the questions and concerns of all sides because we couldn't have that conversation with the APC legal advisor in Osun. So he returns to the program with the hopes that the conversation will be smooth today. So we'll cover the side of the opposition on that conversation today on the program.
And then, of course, your health, again, gets our attention on the show this morning as we get to spotlight issues around neglected tropical diseases. What exactly are these diseases and why do we have to pay attention to them? We'll find out right here on the Morning Brief this Friday morning. So that's how the show looks like in a nutshell, but we have more for you to unpack in just a moment. Guess what? Let's take a look at the national dailies this morning.
All right. Welcome back. Time now to look into the papers, and Mr. Dayo Akintobi, a journalist and dependable analyst, joins us on the program, and he's got his voice back.
Yes, yes, I've got my voice back. Thank God it's Friday.
Thank God it's Friday. You got it right out of my mind and mouth. All right, let's begin with this Nigeria. This Nigeria focuses on the anti-corruption trial of the current administration. Court orders interim forfeiture of 57 properties linked to Malami, former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, of course, grants 500 million naira bail to former Justice Minister, wife, son. Judge warns lawyers against trying to influence him. So there you have it. We could also look at this through the lens of the whole outlook of the anti-corruption trial of this administration. How impartial has it all been?
Well, it's quite disheartening, actually, to see the number of key figures in the immediate past administration who have corruption allegations, from the former CBN Governor Emefiele to the former top legal officer of the country, who himself was responsible for fighting an anti-corruption war, Malami. And even though these are still allegations, the fact that they even exist at all throws up a major cloud of dust. And you begin to ask yourself that, how deep is the rot actually within the administrative circles? And there are allegations that this is actually a political witch hunt, that the reason the immediate past Attorney General is being persecuted or prosecuted simply is because he's identified with the opposition coalition ADC and he has political ambitions to run for governorship of Kebbi. But I also ask myself that, well, there are other people who have joined that opposition coalition who are not being pursued for corruption issues, who have also been in government in the past. I mean, you have the Vice President Atiku, you have Amechi, you have El Rufai, you have Peter Obi himself. They've all, at one time or another, been at the trough of public wealth, public commonwealth. But yet, there is no immediate pursuit of them. So that kind of begs the question as to whether this is actually a political witch hunt or whether the administration actually really is committed about fighting corruption. I think the jury is still out, but I think it's a good step that we're starting to show that there are no sacred cows. I don't care how high up you are in office. If you've not maintained the highest standards of integrity throughout your tenure, you will be called to question at any time during the future. Fortunately, there's no statute of limitations on corruption. In other words, it doesn't expire. Even if you did it 100 years ago, you can still be called to question. So I think it's important that those who are putting themselves up to serve should keep that in the back of their mind, that no matter how long it takes, if you don't uphold the highest standards of integrity, you can and will be called to question sometime in the future. No matter how this comes out for Malami, it is a disgrace. At the end of the day, he's become a fallen public servant. Even if he's acquitted, there'll be some people who forever will view him with a toga of corruption. And look at the sheer volume of what he's been accused of. Look how many billions and how many properties in Abuja, in Kebbi, in Kano. And you ask yourself that if one person is responsible for this much malfeasance in office, then how systemically deep can this rot be? And what does Nigeria's future hold in terms of hope for the rest of us if those who are charged with the responsibility of protecting our commonwealth and using it for the welfare and development of the entire country, for the benefit of all of us, if they're using it to serve themselves?
Let's take a look at The Guardian this morning. I mean, listening to your submission this morning, I mean, I remember, he had to oversee the recovery of the Abacha loads, and, a lot of times it was in the news, and I was very impressed by the fact that even when the people raised questions about what was this monies recovered loads used for, he would always come out and defend it, and I felt, oh, for once, you know what, I think we're getting it right. But now, the story is different. But The Guardian leads with something else. Publish or perish. How varsities mass-produce research without solutions to societal ills. There are other writers there, but staying on that, it says mass-produced research rarely translates into innovations that significantly impact local industries or communities. It goes on and on and on. But this is the reality on ground. It looks like we're a country where we all do research and projects. I mean, I did one as well, undergraduate level, master's level as well, postgraduate level. But man, once we're done, it stays in the shelf somewhere. You give the school 5 copies or thereabouts, and that's the end, Mr. Kitobi. That's where we are.
I saw a video once of piles and piles and piles of this, you know, how they bind the research, your dissertation. You bind it in a hard copy. Yeah. I saw stacks of them dumped in a bush somewhere that probably were never ever reviewed by professors. But see, universities are supposed to be incubators for knowledge and breaking new frontiers of knowledge. And there's supposed to be a natural harmony between these centers of knowledge and the corporate world that implement, that convert knowledge into useful solutions for societal problems. And if you look at many of the developed world, there's a relationship between universities and entrepreneurship entities who take that research and convert them, because universities are simply theoretical institutions. They do the research and they come up with a body of knowledge that says we can solve this problem so and so and so and so way. But they're not implementers. The purpose of university is to dissect and be able to harmonize and distill information and put it in a format in which it can now be converted into solutions that solve societal problems. So in Nigeria, there's a disconnect. The research is happening, but it's not translating into meaningful innovation. I mean, for example, in University of Lagos, as we speak, there's a company that's actually assembling locally manufactured Nigerian vehicles. They're doing that in collaboration with the engineering department of the university. And the university is standing strong behind that company, providing necessary infrastructure, giving them the resources to do the necessary research. And their cars and vehicles are coming out. They are competitive with what is being imported from other countries. This is the type of collaboration that you need to see between the gown and town. Gown and town. There's got to be a natural collaboration between the two of them, but it's not really happening that much in Nigeria. So we need to see more of those collaborations because, as you said, we all do these dissertations, we all do these researches, and
once you're done,
once you're done, it's not really translating into meaningful development at all.
And I mean, we have.
All right, I was just going to say, maybe in a few seconds, just respond to the IPOB 14 Soludo's threat to revoke Onitsha Market's ownership rights. He's been under a lot of scrutiny and criticisms in the last 48 hours after he made that statement that he was going to pull down the market and replace it with a school if they do not go away from observing the sit-at-home order. That's where this whole drama began from.
Yes, that's what it all started about.
He threatened that they must not obey the sit-at-home order. But can you really blame them, really?
It's out of fear, really. I mean, he paid an unscheduled visit to Onitsha Market last Monday, and he found almost all the shops closed. And he said, why? What is this? After all, we've stated that this sit-at-home order on Monday is illegal, and we are supposed to stop doing this and let all markets operate freely. And he got there and the markets were closed. So he shut the market for a week, said everybody should come and regularize their documentation and they should all conform to what the law says, otherwise he'll pull it down. Now, of course, that has created a ruckus. There's a protest going on. They've blocked the 4th Niger Bridge. They're demanding the market be opened back up immediately. They're saying he has no right to pull the market down and replace it with anything whatsoever. So this, of course, is the natural friction between governance and the yearnings of the people. Bottom line is this. IPOB for many years, even after Nnamdi Kanu washed his hands of this sit-at-home on Monday, after the previous administration said it was no longer valid, in 3 of the states, I think Ebonyi, Abia, and Enugu, you no longer see evidence of sit-at-home. But Anambra and Imo, it has continued to prevail there out of fear. And so what the government...
Especially in the local government areas.
Yes, what Governor Soludo is trying to do really is to show strong leadership and bring back a sense of normalcy. As far as he's concerned, look, non-governmental agencies or individuals should not be able to hold the kind of sway that they disrupt the everyday lives of people. Their means to earn a livelihood, their means to go about their normal day. So he's just trying to lead properly and say that, look, it's not right and we won't tolerate it. And that's what he's really trying to do.
You know, but the question then again is the government doing enough? Many have said that, you know, the governor should have gone there to the market without his security detail. Let's just test how well security can be, you know, assured.
So maybe the fear is not limited to the individual.
And there probably needs to be coordination amongst the governors of the Southeast, you know, because some of the reports suggest that some traders are coming from, you know, far distances, as far as Asaba, you know, for instance. So security on the route, and that was, you know, the outcome of the conversation we had with one of the market stakeholders. Is there security on the route to Onitsha itself? And then, is there security guaranteed when they leave the market? Those are their concerns.
But then again, security from a broad perspective is that of the center, it's from the federal government. Governor Soludo doesn't have his own army. He doesn't have it. Well, yeah, you've got ESN and you've got some vigilante groups, but how much security can Governor Soludo himself really provide?
That's another debate. Let's not start it. Let's go to Daily Independent and wrap up very quickly with this one, which is another important story. Weak logistics, trade gaps put Nigeria's opportunities at risk. And you know, the other time you were talking about the disconnect between the town and the gown. These are real problems that we need solving with a knowledge-based economy. So, you know, we could also tie this to a matter of security. You know, this is talking about logistics, transportation that should shore up opportunities, you know, for economic transformation.
Well, see, there's this Africa Free Trade Act, this AFTA thing that Nigeria is a part of, that opened up the entire West African sub-region, the entire continent, to free trade, free movement of labor and things like that. And that was supposed to help boost economies, especially that of Nigeria, which is a major market in terms of goods and services that want to come in. The market is there. In terms of the things that we ourselves produce that we can export. But as this report is saying, due to issues of logistics, transportation, insecurity, things like taxation at the borders, paperwork, documentation. Have any of you ever tried to clear goods from the port recently to see how cumbersome the process is? Even if personal effects, I'm not talking about things you even want to come and sell, just to clear things from the ports, the documentation, the process, the multiple level of levies. It's such a cumbersome process. Now imagine you are a cashew farmer and you're trying to export your goods to Ghana. Just next door there, you want to go and sell. And this AFCTA has given you a framework by which it's supposed to be simple and seamless. But the reality on ground is that it's actually more complicated and cumbersome than ever. And that's what that report is saying, is that we're losing opportunities that AFTA sought to address. We're losing them because of all the structural bottlenecks that are built into the system that stymie our ability to trade freely. So, well, what is the solution? It all comes always down to government. There's bureaucratic red tape. There's corruption to some extent. There's multiple layers of government. Local government will take its own taxes. State will want its own levies. Federal government will also ask for custom duties. So there's got to be more harmony between the levels of government. And then, I'm sorry to say, the influence of touts in the process. You want to take a trailer out of the ports. You can't get it out if you haven't settled. When you're driving along the road to the border, you are stopped at so many checkpoints by customs, by police, by road safety, by even local government touts that are not even uniformed, and you're paying money every step of the way. These are some of the things the report is complaining about that have restricted our ability to take advantage of AFTA in a way that it was envisioned when we signed that agreement.
All right, we hope the message gets to those who should hear it. I mean, I heard yesterday the Senate President saying that perhaps a keke could get to Kaduna from Abuja faster than the train. Hey!
Nigeria will teach you patience.
It will test your patience.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Akitobi, thank you so much. Mr. Akitobi is a journalist, public affairs analyst. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure always. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank God it's Friday.
So we'll take a moment now. When we return, it will be time for our first conversation. Why is the Awujale selection process marked by such great controversy? We have answers for you after this time. Join us again. Welcome back. So let's dive into culture now. And our question is about the Awujale selection process, which has been marked by protest, controversy, concern. So let's get answers now. And joining us is Otumba Lateef Owoyemi, the Olori Ebi Fusengbuwa ruling house. He joins us virtually today on the program. Olori Ebi, is that a good title to refer to you as?
Very appropriate. Thank you very much.
All right. Olori Ebi, welcome to the Morning Brief on Channels Television.
God bless you.
Amen. And you too. First of all, there are reports, and I want you to clarify it, that there are 60 candidates, some say 100 candidates who are in the race, to become Awujale. Why do we have such a number? And then talk to us about the protests that we've seen in Ijebu-Ode demanding the suspension of the selection process.
That's true. In the first place, we started with 12 candidates. After the family had unanimously resolved that a price tag should, as is common in Yoruba land, put on anyone who wants to contest for the position of Awujale. At the general meeting, the amount was reduced from 100 million naira to 10 million naira only. And the members were so informed. 12 members applied and paid the 10 million naira each. From nowhere, one of the contenders called me to say I should change what the committee has resolved by reducing the amount. I told him blankly, I have no power to increase or decrease what the ruling house has unanimously approved. He then told me he was highly connected with the governor of Osun State, and I was going to use all his influence to ensure the decision was reversed. Subsequently, we had an invitation from the Osun State government to meet with the senior state officials, especially Commissioner for Chieftaincy Affairs and the Secretary of the Government. At that meeting, we were advised that what we had charged was not fair to everybody, and we should go, one, return all the 10 million each of the 12 candidates had paid, and secondly, announce that any willing member of the family could apply to collect the application candidature funds from us without paying a naira. Consequently, from within 3 days, we were able to refund all the money to those who had paid. And we sent copies of the bank advice to the Honorable Commissioner for Chieftaincy Affairs, the Secretary to the State Government, and to the Governor himself, in evidence that we complied in a record time with the request and with the directive we were given. And they commended verbally our Council of Elders for being so honest and very responsible. And that elevated our prestige before the government authorities. But something then happened. Members started to flock in all kinds of characters. From 12 candidates, it went to 15, to 20, to 30, to 40, to 45, to 50, to 60, to 70, to 80, to 90, and 95 before we went for the formal candidate nomination meeting. At that meeting, those who had submitted all their records were nominated by one member of the family and seconded by the other. After exhausting the whole list, I, as the chairman, asked the meeting, are there any persons here again that think we can add or want to add any more candidates? 12 people raised their hands, and I asked them to line up and queue. And in pairs, nominator and seconder, we had 6 more candidates. And that was why the number seemed very large. But as a ruling house, all we could do was to gather the names of those who wanted to be considered for the position. We had no powers under the law to screen out anybody, to take anybody out of the list, or to add anybody to the list as compiled at the nomination meeting, both by our own secretariat and by the secretary to the local government who came as observers. Consequently, the list of candidates were compiled and numbered serially from number 1 to 95. We then worked on arranging the data submitted personally by each candidate, and those also submitted by candidates just nominated on the floor of the meeting. And an assignment that almost every Ijebu person thought would be impossible to achieve became achieved and achievable by our committee of elders. And that was how we were able to have an appointment with the kingmakers and comply with the law by submitting to them the list of candidates together with the personal data, certificates, commendations, and all that were required by the kingmakers, successfully achieving a feat which was previously considered impossible to achieve.
All right. So, well, because this throne dates back to, I think, 1957, it's a long time ago, I'm just wondering in my mind, what kind of person makes a good fit for that position or throne?
There are traditional requirements, and there are what the job requirements. The kingmakers had been carefully selected by the late Awujale over a number of years to ensure that each one was from a reputed, well-respected family unit, was well-placed in a position in life, had a viable employment or career, and was sufficiently blessed by God that they would not be susceptible to any bribe or corruption by those who had been boasting that they were going to get the throne, come what, come may. Thank God, they started their work, and the whole ruling house were very, very happy, as things were going on very, very smoothly. Only for us to receive a letter from the state government saying that they had received some complaints, some petitions, and some reports, none of which was ever brought to our notice.
All right, Otumba.
Excuse me, sir. To date, no candidate had either called me, phoned me, or sent a letter complaining against anything that you had done so far. So we were worried and surprised. What were these allegations that the government had that were not made available to us for counterbalance the allegations? Because we had a lot of enemies. We had those who wanted to sabotage the system, and we had those who were praying that our ruling house will fail to complete the process, and the kingship, after 100 years, will now shift to another ruling house. And thank God, that has not happened so far.
Speaking of allegations, one of those who is alleging exclusion and discrimination from the process is the legendary Fuji musician, Kwam, who has written, I believe, to the ruling house and to the state government seeking suspension. Some have said that he's from the Fidikwote ruling house and is not from Fushengbua. Is he from Fushengbua or from Fidikwote?
I had heard a lot about Wasiu for a long time. I've never seen him physically until after the death of the Royal Highness Awujale. And we were to meet the Otumbas in the residence of one of our members. There, I met him for the first time. And when he greeted me respectfully, he then told me, "Sir, are you aware that Fidikwote was a son of Fushengbua?" I said, that's shocking to me. I've not heard that history before. He said, yes, that is this. I said, okay, I'm learning every day. That was the first time I had anything to do with him. A day before the closure of nominations, he brought a letter to me saying that he was interested in becoming the next Awujale. Traditionally, there are thousands and thousands of members who claim to be members of the ruling house. But we have a process in the ruling house, long established process. You will get a particular form from the secretariat where you will indicate your name, your details, and through which of your parents you have become a member of our ruling house. And the head of that unit, of your unit, will countersign that in truth you are a member of our ruling house. We will then receive it and give you a membership card, which entitles you to attend our meetings and take part in all we are doing. On the day the musician brought his letter to me, it was the last day for submission of completed application forms. Typically, the application form will take about 3 or 5 days for anybody to complete. So I said, okay, here is the family registration form. Can you quickly complete it? And I would exceptionally extend the closure date by giving you about 7 days within which to return the membership identification form, collect the candidature form, complete them, and return them to me. He got the papers. We never had anything from him until a day to the deadline I gave him almost expired. When I got the paper, I took it to the council of the ruling house, and they said, who signed as his family unit head? He's not a recognized member of our ruling house. We have heard that this gentleman was from Fidepot ruling house. From which lineage of the ruling house has he emerged? We could not trace anything. We then wrote him a letter, a very polite letter, that we have seen your paper. We cannot see any evidence that will convince us that you're a genuine and legitimate member of our ruling house. And he went to court against us. Out of his own free will and accord, he withdrew that litigation. And we carried on with our work. We then proceeded to do our family nomination meeting. And the legitimate candidates were nominated. And the meeting closed. And we submitted our list of candidates to the kingmakers for the action. There is a problem of misconception. In the past, Obas were selected by the elders of the families who consulted the oracle, and the elder would just raise the hand of a selected candidate and say, this now is the next Awujale. But that has changed since 1959. Only the family at the family meeting, open one, where everybody, young, old, fat, lean, will take part and make nominations, and somebody will second that candidate. Once that is done, the person becomes a candidate. No family head, no member, nobody can influence the course of events. No family head can interfere in promoting any candidate or demoting any candidate. The entire list is then submitted to the kingmakers, who have all the authority and power to reflect from the association with the Awujale what are the challenges that will face the new Awujale, and what are the capabilities and qualities of the candidate that will best fit the position and elevate the Jebu kingdom into greater heights. And that is what they were doing before we had interruption.
Oloriabi, is that not part of the problem? I mean, from ancient times, and we've seen this in epics. If I was consulted in the decision-making for the appointment and election of a new king, as the case may be, and that puts an end to all controversies, because if I had foresight and hindsight and every other sight. So is IFA still consulted in any way? Because you referred to this ending since 1950s.
When the crisis for the leadership of the ruling house broke out in 2013, the family had been meeting once in every 2 months. And every quarter, we had some well-respected and effective IFA priests who would come to our meeting and divine for us, tell us how things were standing, where the matter was heading for, and what will happen today and tomorrow. And in that process, we had been having indication of what the next Awujale would almost look like. We had been foretold that when the contest opens, the number of candidates will be so large that no room will be able to contain them. That the selection would be easier than we expect, and the emerging Awujale would be a record breaker and perform much better, much more effectively than any of the 59 Awujales that we will have had by that time. Ever since the nominations began, we continue conferring with the FAR people and had guided us about what will happen next, what is happening now, and who would likely become the candidate. But we kept those facts to ourselves as elders of the ruling house. And we thought we should allow the kingmakers to make their own choice voluntarily without being teleguided by our information. Because we wanted, if I had told people that if it does not come fulfilled, it will return to heaven. Even the current crisis that is going on right now, we have been forewarned about it. That somebody, a man, would start a confusion of the process, and we have been told and forewarned how the whole argument will end.
All right. Osun, I was going to ask, maybe perhaps can tell us how is it going to end? Okay. I'm told that your network is frozen, Otumba. I mean, I was just curious to perhaps ask just a follow-up to that question to see how is it going to end. So that
I will not repeat the balance.
Yeah, Otumba, okay, quickly, please, if you can.
Now, we've been told that whoever is trying to mess things up will not succeed, no matter how powerful the person may be, and that the career of that particular person may be affected by the crisis he might likely create. We pray to the Almighty God that those who are promoting the crisis that we now have would kindly, in the name of God, and in their own interest, move backwards and let us complete.
All right.
All right.
The job of God Almighty as the commission does to do.
All right. So, yes, let me squeeze in one or two more questions very quickly. So, I'm just wondering in my head, because I know that traditional rulers in the country have had to go through a lot. And we see the interference from governors, you know, from the government. In Kano State, there was a disruption with the Emirates. As we speak, it looks like we even have two leaders, two emirs in Kano State, for instance. In Oyo State, I remember the late Ajimobi as well. Really controversial moments when he made some changes as well. So, do you think that as the calls for traditional rulers or institutions to have a place in Nigeria's constitution grow louder, is that a position that you also take? Do you think that governments or governors have rather been a blessing or a curse to traditional institutions?
Ijebu and Ijebu in particular is very different from other communities. The only time the colonial masters imposed an Oba on the people, it created 26 years of crisis. The Oba was attacked physically and almost assassinated while the governor was paying a visit to Ijebu.
Oh dear, it appears as if we've had another experience of poor network, and we have very important questions, at least one or two more to put through to Otumba.
And dump them in the residence of the palace to annoy him, to embarrass him every day for many, many years. So we don't expect that intervention by government would work at this time again. And we pray that those in power would kindly leave Ijebu alone. Because Ijebu was a country before the colonial masters came and forcefully merged us with the rest of Nigeria. That individualism is one of the characters of every typical Ijebu man. Wherever he is, he's not a follower of government. He doesn't go about begging government for favors. He doesn't go about begging for ministerial appointments or board appointments. He satisfied himself and struggled to excel in whatever he was doing. Ijebu Moduabi, that's what all struggle to do. So we are going to go back and pray to God that the current intervention will stop as quickly as possible.
All right.
And two things will happen.
All right.
One should happen. the governor should allow the kingmakers
to
carry on with their legitimate work, while he allows those in charge of crimes to investigate any allegation against anybody. Because crime is not started bad. So that can always wait for 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months. And whoever was having anything alleged against him can be confronted with the alleger so that they can face themselves. The truth can be extracted by the competent authorities, not the officers of the Chief Justice Department. And then the person can be prosecuted. Because it has happened before. Those who committed crimes during the World War, after 70, 80 years, were fished out and punished. So, yes.
Let me get this one in very quickly. And speaking of interference, we hear that, some concerns are being raised about the governor in Ogun State having a candidate himself. We don't know how true that is. Perhaps you can speak to that. But more importantly, there are reports that the Oshugbo is calling for the appointment of another round of kingmakers. Did you hear me? That the Oshugbo is calling for another round of kingmakers, as the current kingmakers in your ruling house have been compromised following allegations of bribery. But you said earlier that 10 million naira was returned. Is that different from reports of allegations of bribery? We've seen Ghana Must Go bags and videos being carried.
You've seen Ghana Must Go bag. You did not see us opening the Ghana Must Go bags in the place of television. Would anybody be carrying money to bribe anybody in the face of television and reporters? What was in those bags were the documentations collected from each of the candidates. Now, Awujale's question is a very, very senior one and very, very important one.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Again, his network is...
When you have a critical conversation as this one, and then the network becomes a problem.
When we're getting to... Okay, I think we have his audio back.
And in any case, as regards the family, anybody who pays any money to anybody in the family is just wasting his time, because the family has no role to play in the king-making process except to gather all the nominations, allow them to be recorded, and take the recorded documents to the kingmakers, who alone have absolute power over who becomes the Awujale. No family member can influence who will become an Awujale, who will not become an Awujale. Therefore, anybody who thinks he's been taken, because most Nigerians believe that you cannot get anything from anybody in authority without bribing him. I, as a person, in my 88 years of life, I have never taken 1 kobo from anybody in my life. Kick forward, kick backward, kick sideways, deal or nothing. I have never in my life taken any 1 naira from anybody. And I've never accepted any gift or even any money from many of the candidates that have been coming to either see me or to consult me or to submit their documentations since we started this process. And if anybody can come out and say, Otumba Oyemi demanded or received 1 kobo from him, let the person go on the air and say it.
But I mean, that amount of money in the first place, 100 million naira for that
10 million naira.
First, it was 100 million before it was reduced to 10 million. I mean, it's almost like you want to become the president. That's what political parties. That's what political parties put their form sales for.
Please, sir, let me advise you. It is the members general at the members general meeting that various suggestions were being made, and it went from 10 million to 50 million to 25 million to 20 million until it finally settled at 10 million, and it was unanimously approved because certain expenses will have to be incurred. The day we had our nomination, well, now we know how much we spent on getting the thing organized properly. So no king-making process is ever done on empty hands.
Has money always
when the government, please, the money was not supposed to be paid to anybody.
Has money always been part of the selection process, going back by history, the history books? Has money always been part of the selection process?
I will answer you with 2 proverbs. One of the proverbs of the name of our reading house, Oma Akobi Shese, Oma Akobi Shese, that is the descendants of elders who use kola nut as their feet when they are negotiating for any position or thing. Secondly, there's a proverb, Agba Ojobi, Omode Ojoye, which means when in those days, when you don't monetize the elders, you can't take a chieftaincy title. But in this case, that has changed because the role of the Agbas in selecting the Oba has changed to the mass participation of 4 members of the family, young or old. So therefore, there is no cause at all for any candidate who is sensible and knows what he's doing to go visiting any Agba to go and give him money. The Agba cannot help him in any way, and nobody has been able to assist anybody or discourage anybody. We have always encouraged everybody who came around to participate and take part in it. And the money that was supposed to be paid as a nomination fee is standard in Yoruba land now, but it's paid to the account of the family and it's disbursed for the expenses of the family in terms of the process of appointing an Awujale.
But we also know, Olorebi, we also know that traditionally a candidate that is going to visit an Agba does not go empty-handed. That, you know, more often than not, they go with gifts. And isn't that subject to some form of corruption?
No, as far as I know, I had no candidate ever visited me and I took any money from him. Even the person that came to your studio and made all kinds of shit, he came to visit me and he asked me, how much did he bring to me? What did I do with the wizard? Did I even touch it? I returned it to him. And he posted a report a day thereafter, commending me, commending my integrity, and saying that I was one of the most honest persons he has ever known. I can send you the paper he put on Facebook after visiting me. I refused to take any cover from him. Even when families were coming to pay homage to me, with lorry loads of soft drinks, I will only take one cartoon of those soft drinks and return the 40 or 50 other bottles of cartoons back to them to go and share for their family when they hold their next family meeting. Ask any family unit.
All right. As we wind down now, following those protests and concerns, we hear that there has been a closure of the palace of the Awujale. Please confirm to us if it remains closed. And it's quite important to know whether the family is concerned about reports that the governor also is trying to push a candidate forward.
I had an appointment one-to-one with the governor on this matter, on this issue of our selection. And he told me emphatically that neither him nor the president has any interest in any candidate. And there is a candidate that the family chooses and the kingmakers approve that they were going to appoint and approve for us. So we now started hearing all kinds of fantastic and fabulous rumors. I have not been present in any meeting between the governor and the kingmakers, but the whole time is full of allegations that there were attempts to bribe them, to terrorize them, to influence them towards a particular candidate. I don't know whether it is true or not. It is only an independent group of examiners that can confirm those and interview everybody and get the facts straight. But that's not the issue. The issue now is that a process that was smooth sailing and going very, very well to the happiness of everybody in Ijebuland had been halted. We have begged the governor to please, in his almightiness, direct today that the kingmakers should go and complete their work. He should then set up an independent panel of experts, policemen and investigators to investigate any allegation of corruption against anybody. That person should be given the opportunity of facing their ledger so that they can argue among themselves, and the onlookers and the interviewers will see who was lying. If there was false allegation, those making false allegations should be prosecuted. If the allegations are proved, those proved against should be prosecuted as well. So we can have a peace in Nigeria. But for now, candidates and others are sponsoring fake demonstrations to manipulate the area, the issue, to convince the governor to continue to solve the process. As regards the Osugbos, they had always been part and parcel of king-making in Ijebuland. But some years ago, the group had a conflict with the then Awujale, who, in his own wisdom, recognized all of them. Oh. So as of today, in the official records of the palace, those Osugbos have been put aside by the late Awujale. It will be the duty and the priority of the next Awujale to place them back in their appropriate roles so that they are part and parcel of Ijebu Palace administration.
All right. so many things that we've learned from this interview, and we hope that it provides the spin that would, compel the state government to order the resumption of the selection process. We must anchor at this point, and thank you very much for coming on the program to provide all of these clarifications. We've been talking with the Oloriebi Fusengbuwa ruling house in Ijebu-Ode, Otumba Lateef Owoyemi. Otumba Owoyemi, thank you for coming on the Morning Brief.
Thank you very much. God bless you all, and God bless Channels Television. Thank you so much. God bless. Bye-bye.
Amen. Bye-bye, sir. And so we'll take a moment now. When we return, our next conversation will be on the local government administration row in Osun State. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. Officially the second leg of our conversation this morning, and we get to talk party politics and internal democracies. We're joined this hour by the legal advisor, APC in Osun State's Barrister Adegoke Ogushola, who joins us live now on the program. Mr. Ogushola, thank you indeed for holding on. We understand you've been hanging on for quite some time now. My first question to you is, why is it that you and chairmen and councillors of your party, why are you giving the governor of that state and his appointees and commissioners sleepless nights?
We are not giving them any sleepless nights. And whatever is currently happening in Osun State was offshoot of a wrong decision taken by the executive governor of Osun State, His Excellency Governor Adeleke Ademola, few minutes to the midnight of 27th November 2022, when he issued executive order to send us out of the local government secretariat. And he asked the HLA, who are the most senior officers in the local government, to take over the charge of administration of the local government. So he started the problem and is now witnessing or experiencing the consequence of the problem he started on the 27th day of November 2022, when he issued executive order to sack us.
I asked that question because just before we get to the legal issues, which is why we have brought you here, I asked that question because I was going to ask you, I know the governor has defected to Accord Party, but if for any reason he decides to join the APC, are you willing to accept him there? Does he have a place in the APC?
Well, that is the decision of the top echelon of the party. I cannot say yes, I cannot say no. It is the leadership of the party at the national and the state level who say that somebody should join us or somebody should join us. I do not have authority to speak on that.
But I'm just wondering, as a party member, I mean, politics is all about numbers. If the executive governor decides to join the APC, I think that you should be willing and happy to have him join you. So, but let's get to the legal issues now, because there are court judgments from your camp.
Well, it depends. When we have a governor who does not perform,
yes, so
it becomes, when we have a governor who does not perform, it becomes liability to a political party.
Oh my word. Again, your network seems to be freezing, but I would love us to just go and stay with the issues, which I was just going to ask you now, because there are court judgments from your end, the APC, and there are court judgments as well from the camp of the governor. So I'm just wondering where we are in terms of these legal proceedings. What exactly do you have from your end? Oh my word, we understand that his network is frozen. We'll see how we can get back to the APC.
If he can hear us as the conversation continues here on this side of the divide, the APC in Osun State has a lot of questions to answer, some of which have been put through by the state government, and one of which would be assuming, the governor has said in his broadcast that assuming without conceding that the local government chairman of the APC had any tenure indeed to hold on to, that tenure since elapsed in October 2025. Yeah. And so if it elapsed following that disputed election that was conducted in 2022, why are they still holding on to the local government offices? Mr. Ogushola?
That is a wrong impression, and I'm here to correct that. We had our election in October 2022, and immediately the governor came in as the governor of the state on 27th day of November 2022. He sacked us. He sent us packing from our positions. And as at that period, before he won the election, the PDP sued OSEC to challenge the processes that brought us in. And on the 25th day of November 2022, judgment was delivered by the Federal High Court in Osun State. And when that judgment was delivered, it was against us. We immediately filed a notice of appeal at the Court of Appeal, Akure. And in the process of pursuing our appeal, the governor issued an executive order to send us packing. And we were not relenting in pursuing our appeal. So on the 10th day of February 2025, we succeeded on our appeal and the judgment was set aside. So we were restored back to our office. And the question is, what happens to our position between 27th day of November 2022 and 10th day of February 2025? How do we account for that? So the only thing for us to do is to approach a court to determine our tenure as a government. And that is what we are currently doing. So the law assumes that our tenure starts on the 10th day of February 2025. So, and if we go by that, we have 3 years to use. So it means that our tenure will lapse on 9th day of February 2028.
For an election that was conducted in October 2022?
You said what?
For an election that was conducted in October 2022?
There was an interregnum. There was an interregnum between October 2022, between 27th day of November 2022
regardless
and 10th day of February 2025.
Regardless of that interregnum, sir, what has happened in that space? Who held control of those local governments in Osun State?
The governor of the state put up what he called caretaker governments across the 30 local governments in Osun State. So he put in place the caretaker committee in the local governments. And they held the position until sometimes 2024, when they were asked to resign. And a purported election was conducted in February, I think February 22, 2025, when in actual fact, the Attorney General of the Federation advised that they should not conduct any election when a subsisting government was about to listen to their judgment that even after we have gotten our judgment. After we have gotten our judgment and we were restored back to the office, they went ahead to conduct the election.
All right. And so the case to determine the tenure was, heard just 2 days ago, and the Accord Party-led government said your party was not represented in court. Tell us why your lawyers did not appear. Mr. Ogushola, did you hear that?
Yes, it's true that our case at the Federal High Court for the determination of our tenure came up 2 days ago. And it's also a fact that our lawyers were not in court. The truth of it is that it takes two to tango. When you have a case in court, you must have notices of the hearing of the case. When you don't have the notices of the hearing, you cannot just throw into the court and say, I want to conduct my case. So we were not aware, our lawyers are not aware of the date of the case. And in actual fact, they were not informed when the date was picked. It ought to have come earlier, but they were not informed when the date changed.
All right. So let me ask you, Mr. Legal Advisor. So confirm for us that the allocation from the government at the center it comes to the APC chairman. Is that the case?
That is true. When we were reinstated in February, thereafter, we were told to open account with the CBN. And we did that at Osogbo branch of the CBN. So the CBN also directed us to open accounts with commercial banks. And we did that with United Bank for Africa. And all that I've just mentioned, the account with the CBN, the account with the UBA, were opened in the name of the various local governments in Osun State. You know, the PDP people, or the People's Democratic Party, lay claim to the fact that we open individual account. That is not true. The account is government account and is inoperative. They have been sending allocation through the CBN to the account. And the only problem we have now is various cases instituted by the state government to put impediment on our way to access the money to cater for the needs of our people in various local governments.
Mr. Gushala, how legal is that account recognized in the eyes of the law, especially while the case of tenure is still being determined by the court? And of course, we may not be able to refer to the appeal court's verdicts that are being disputed by both sides now. But how legal is this account with this particular bank in the eyes of the law when there is traditionally a joint account allocation committee for state governments that are, standard regardless of which administration is in power?
The issue of joint account allocation, or joint allocation account rather, has been settled by Supreme Court judgments. That the local government in Nigeria is a tier of government with autonomous existence. So the issue of joint allocation account does not arise at all after the judgment of the Supreme Court that recognized the local government as autonomous governments in Nigeria. So then you said in the face of the tenure, what is the legality of that particular account? The answer is this. When there's a legal process about a process of an election, the law allows you to stay in the office until you exhaust the right of appeal or the right to approach the court. So we still have the right to remain in office until that particular case is determined. I will give you a good example. In 2011 or thereabout, when Governor Rauf Aregbesola came into power, PDP local government functionaries were still in local government. And when he came, there was a pending case. And the governor said, okay, since there was a pending case, let us leave them. We don't need to dissolve the local government elected officials. So he left them in the office. They were there for about a year. It was a day to the end of their tenure that the Supreme Court gave judgments, and we didn't send them away. It is the same judgment the PDP is using us now. I mean, it's using against us now.
So if I get you correctly, you are confirming that indeed those accounts were opened with this bank that you have mentioned, with the help of the CBN, with the Central Bank of Nigeria. And you're saying that it is recognized...
I'm not saying with the help.
You're saying that this is legal in line with the Supreme Court. Pardon me, sir. Perhaps you allow me to land with the question. You're saying that this is recognized in line with the Supreme Court judgment or granting autonomy to local governments. But in other cases, in other states of the Federation, state governments are hinging their continued control of JAC on the need for a constitutional amendment to provide clarity to the status of JAC. So why is the federal government enabling this opening of another account apart from JAC for the APC disputed-led local governments in Osun State?
That impression is wrong.
This is not an impression, sir. This is fact, based on what obtains in other states of the Federation. And the President has in fact spoken to this, saying that state governors should allow local governments run, that if they do not comply with the local government autonomy ruling, that he would be forced to issue an executive order. Why is the case of Osun State different, sir?
Well, you know, the case of Osun State is not different. You should expect this because we have different governments at different levels. We have Accord, PDP at the state level. We have APC at local government level. So you should expect that the political functionaries at the local governments, because we are law-abiding citizens of Nigeria, we will follow the rules of the law. The rule of law now is that the Supreme Court has said the local government in Nigeria is an autonomous government, is a separate tier of government from the state government. And just yesterday, the governor of Borno State directed all those who are concerned to send allocation directly to the 27 local governments in that particular state. So, and we have other states. It is only that they are not in the news. Osun State is in the news because we have different party control, different level of government. PDP is controlling the state, or Accord is controlling the state government, while APC is controlling the local government. So
are you aware, sir, that the governor of Osun State says the state has had to provide intervention from its own resources for payment of council workers at different levels in Osun State?
Well, he has taken it upon himself to do that. It is our responsibility to pay our workers.
So why is the APC in Osun State impeding local government administration by holding on to the funds that rightfully belong to local governments in Osun State?
You know, before now,
or maybe we can ask you, Mr. Bushra, maybe we should ask the question.
Let me answer this.
Yeah, so
hold on, let him answer.
Question. What are you doing with the funds? Because that's my own question. What are you doing? What is your chairman? What are they doing with the funds currently in their position for the last how many months?
Okay, let me answer the latest one. The answer to that is that the governor has been putting impediment on our way to access the fund through court cases, institutional of court cases. And you know, UBA is a corporate organization. We have to look at the legal processes before the mandate to do certain things with the money is accepted. So for now, the governor or the state government had instituted many cases. The latest is coming up today at the Magistrate Court of Osogbo. The criminal matter is coming up today at the Magistrate Court of Osogbo to take the officials and UBA to prison. So he has been putting impediment on our way. Then the earlier question, what I want to say about that is that it is the governor that took it over himself to be paying the salaries of the local government workers. I was once the caretaker chairman before I was elected in October 2022. And I used to sign the schedule for the payment of salary of all my workers every month, including the salary of political office holders. But the governor took it upon himself to be so that they will perpetuate the strike action. So it was a way to ensure that the local government workers did not resume on time because they were being paid, even without going to work. Then let me say this, that the local government system had been an autonomous system of government before now, but we did not recognize that particular history. In 1991, when Babangida was at the head of state, the local government operated autonomously, without interference from any state military administrator. Why not now, when the Supreme Court made it a duty for local government to exist autonomously? So without any interference with the local government. Okay. So again,
I was just going to ask you, perhaps until when the governor started paying those salaries, were your APC chairman paying the salaries? Were they using those funds for the people?
You know, we first of all have to clarify this one. One, the governor is owing us 84.
It's a very strange question.
The governor is owing the local government across Osun State about 85 billion naira. The money he collected when he put up impediment on our way to get to our offices. So he has money with him. Perhaps he's spending that money on our behalf.
You're saying that
which we are going to challenge in court very soon. And what we are doing with the money, I've just told you that the governor has put impediments on our way to access the money.
When was that?
This is the third time I will say it.
Yes, you are saying it, but I was going to ask, when exactly did the governor, which month? And I was asking, before he puts that impediment, were you paying those salaries? Were you paying were you paying the salaries?
We came on board on February 10th.
Okay.
2025. And on 17th February 2025, one of us was killed. That was the chairman, Irewole local government, late Abbas. And immediately after that, Noge in Osun State went on strike. So they went on strike. And even as at that time, we had not received our allocation. It was sometimes in July or June that we received our allocation. Because they asked us to go and open an account when the civil servant did not resume duty.
So let us understand now. You quoted 80 billion earlier on. How much?
85 billion.
85 billion. How much was the Osun State government able to access before you started accessing funds?
They accessed. I think they had the custody of the whole money, about 85 billion naira, because they didn't allow us to operate the old allocation accounts. And before we could open accounts, this money had been paid to them. So about 85 billion naira.
So your APC chairmen have not accessed any local government funds?
For now, we have not done that. So because of the various cases.
You have not accessed 1 naira of the local government funds?
No, before the instituted cases, we paid salary. Before the instituted cases to ensure that we did not have access.
So when you paid salaries, how much did you access?
Well, I can only talk about my own local government. I cannot have the total of the from the 30 local governments.
So how much came to you, sir?
As what?
As running costs for your local government.
We don't, you know, the running cost is being handled by civil servants. The running cost does not go to the pocket of politicians.
I believe this shouldn't be difficult to answer. How much did you access as the presiding officer for your local government? Are
you talking about the allocation I got in a month, or for the period I've got in
for the period.
The allocation.
For the period you were in office.
For the period. For now, I think I've gotten about 3 billion naira in my local government.
So if we calculated that based on what other local governments in Osun State got, we could have a fair idea. And there could be, subsequent questions as to how, judiciously those funds were managed. But you said earlier that in Borno, that the governor has ordered the transfer directly of local government funds to the local government. But in other states of the federation, and when we could mention Ondo State, for instance, where the civil society is demanding full implementation of the local government autonomy verdict by the Supreme Court through the transfer of funds of local governments directly to their accounts, because local governments, as at the time we had that conversation, were not accessing their funds directly. So the question is, why is your APC-led government selective in its approach to ensuring the direct transfer of local government funds to the local government and not the states?
That is the problem we are having in Nigeria. You don't need to say, or you don't need to complain that certain thing is happening in one state, is not happening in the other states. The local government system in that state may tolerate the situation whereby the governor decides for them. But we cannot tolerate that in Osun State.
All right.
Just because we were elected as the governor was also elected. So, in Ondo State, the local government system may not have been autonomous one because they tolerated the interference of the state government.
It's always interesting.
But here in Osun State, we cannot tolerate that because the law does not allow that.
I think you've made your point, Mr. Awujale, and we have to round off our conversation with you. Now, it's interesting because in Ondo State, the governor there is an APC governor. And if you count the numbers now, we have almost 24, 25, if not more than that, governors who are from your party as well. So it's interesting to see the dynamics in some states and what we are currently experiencing. But for me, my concern is that in all of this, yes, in all of this, I feel for the people of Osun State, really. And what I see is that perhaps violence is going to erupt. These tensions, they are building gradually. I'm wondering perhaps if your party will take responsibility for this violence and tensions when they get to the apex of it, because it appears that you have that federal might support, and that's why you're able to perhaps confront this. But almost, Uncle, at this point, thank you indeed, as always, for...
Let me just respond.
No, we have to go now. You've made your case. Legal advisor, Osun State APC, Barrister Adegoke Ogunsola, thank you indeed for your time on the program.
Not correct.
And all the best.
The government does not exercise any power over us or anybody.
Yes, you can. All right, you've made your point. But this is the morning brief. Just before we go, let's quickly tell you that we are not done with you just said. That's because we have to cross over live now to the nation's capital, Abuja, as we get to talk about something really very important. It concerns you and it concerns us right here. It has to do with your health. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of which, we now have joining us from our Abuja studio for this next critical conversation on neglected tropical diseases, Professor Joy Shaibu, the country director, Site Savers Nigeria. Professor Shaibu, thank you so much for coming on the program and for holding on for such a long time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure, and good morning.
Good morning. And so there are reports that, of course, Nigeria is making significant progress in the fight against NTDs. But sometimes some of us would assume that we know what NTDs are. Let's start with that, without an assumption. What are neglected tropical diseases?
Thank you very much. Neglected tropical diseases, as the name implies, are diseases that affect the poorest of the poor communities. We still find them in urban areas where you have poor sanitation and poverty. And the WHO has listed 21 diseases that fall under that category. Some of them, most of them can be prevented. Many of them can be treated. And there are some situations where they can actually reduce the quality of life of individuals, increase poverty in communities, and also lead to death in some cases. So they are neglected because They are a group of diseases that have not received the required attention from government and the society at large.
So reports say that 25% of Nigerians are predisposed to neglected tropical diseases. Tell us the factors that predispose, that encourage that level of vulnerability.
Thank you very much. Like you have mentioned, it's something that affects everyone. And that 25% of Nigerians translates to 1 out of 3 Nigerians having one form of neglected tropical disease. And the factors that contribute to this are poverty, because these people who are in rural areas do not have access to basic water, clean drinking water or sanitation. And this is where some of these diseases breed. We also have issues of access to healthcare, basic healthcare, primary healthcare. And so this allows for some of these diseases to continue to thrive and to affect communities where they exist. So hopefully, if the government is able to provide clean drinking water, and we are able to work collaboratively to ensure that the environment is clean and healthy, and people are educated on the effects of these illnesses and how they can be prevented or treated, hopefully we should have a better Nigeria. And Nigeria will certainly not be counted among the countries in Africa that bear the huge burden of neglected tropical diseases.
Professor Shaibu, just walk us through some of the prevalent diseases. Let's see if we can run through some of those diseases to remind ourselves of what exactly they sound like or look like.
Okay, so like I said, there are 21 of them. But currently, as prevalent. A country and WHO also. Okay, so the prevalence will vary depending on the areas where they are endemic.
All right.
And there are, for instance, like trachoma, which causes blindness, can be found mainly in the trachoma belt, which runs across the northwestern side of the country and the northeastern side of the country. We have pockets in the southeast, but mainly this is a disease that spans across the northwest and the northeast of Nigeria. And we have also what we call the river blindness. That one is associated with anywhere where you have bodies of water, so it's all over the country. And you have the soil-transmitted helminths, which usually affect mostly children and can lead to other debilitating illnesses that can get children out of school and affect their growth and development in total.
How would you describe healthcare facilities at that level, local governments level, community level, rural areas? How would you describe the state of our healthcare facilities at that level to handle some of these prevalence?
To be honest, it is far from what is desired, because most of the local government primary healthcare facilities do not have the basic amenities to be able to tackle these diseases. But more importantly, most of the medications that are required to prevent these diseases are not readily available in quantities that can be affordable to these communities. So even if the health workers have been trained and have the capacity to attend to these diseases, they do not have the required medicines to be able to do those. So there are issues of drug supply. There are issues also in some instances of availability of health workers, especially in recent times, where you have lots of health workers leaving the country. And then, of course, there are issues of knowledge and education of the health workers that work in these areas where these diseases are more prevalent.
All right.
What this tells me is that, people have very few options, particularly those in rural areas where some of these NTDs are prevalent. But you know what they say in health, prevention is better than cure. So for those who are, predisposed to the conditions that encourage, sometimes the outbreak of some of these diseases, what are the options available for them in the area of preventive health?
You're right when you say that prevention is better than cure, and it's actually cheaper than cure, as we say in the health sector. And the options that are available would be social behavior change communication. And we want to thank channels for also taking the lead in this one. What we're doing currently is raising awareness about these diseases and empowering communities to help them understand some of the driving forces that live in their community that they can influence, not necessarily by paying any money, like building latrines and access to clean drinking water, ensuring that their environment is clean, because these are the things that will help reduce the spread of these diseases. We're also encouraging people and using the media in a way that they would understand how they need to also present to the hospitals early, because if we encourage people to come to the hospital early, then some of the debilitating complications like blindness that can result from these diseases that continue to progress will be reduced. So we're using all forms of communication, sensitization to ensure that we prevent these diseases. But most importantly, like I had mentioned earlier, there are medications that can be used to actually prevent these diseases. But we also notice that if people are not very well educated, even when those medicines are provided, they will not readily accept those medicines. So communication and social behavior communication is something that is critical in preventing NTDs and also in treating those who come down with these diseases.
Mm. Professor Shaibu, because you've mentioned latrine, it just brought back some sort of memories for me. I'm trying not to mess the breakfast of people who were having one this morning, but I mean, some of us have seen better days. But there are still communities who have to use that form, you know. So I'm just wondering, is there something they can do? There are still communities where they still get their water from wells, some from streams that drink water directly from rivers, you know. So I'm just wondering, what's your advice? What's your word of, perhaps, what counsel would you offer such people? Because that's the option left for them.
Sadly so. You would think that the issue of access to basic things like latrine should be something that should not be mentioned in Nigeria, but there are many rural communities where they do not have any access to latrines or drinking water, like you have mentioned. And we know that things are hard for the government. And so my advice to such communities is to take their health and their lives in their hands. We have seen communities that have been activated and motivated within themselves to have like a joint community effort to build latrines in specific and strategic areas of the community. We've also tried to influence the community with many social behavior change communication messaging to say it's important, you know, that you do this. So we've linked that to marriages and other things to help people become aware. So community efforts can go a long way. And of course, there's a limit to what the community and rural poor can do. And so the government needs to take also more responsibility in addressing these needs, especially for pure, clean drinking water for most of these rural communities, because if we have that, it will really go a long way in reducing the prevalence of these neglected tropical diseases.
And now let's talk about the interventions that are being provided for those who are already, you know, suffering one form of NTD or the other. And I'm reading a report here which is quoting that 165 million Nigerians need preventive chemotherapy against NTDs. That's quite a number. Talk to us about cost of intervention for some of the leading NTDs that Nigerians are suffering, and what you see to be perhaps a lack or a measured political will of the healthcare institutions, you know, to coming in to help sufferers.
So in terms of cost, we receive donations of billions of dollars of these medicines from directly the manufacturers from outside of this country to ensure that these medicines get to the people who require it at no cost at all. And but with this current funding landscape and the USAID cuts and other challenges that we face in the donor landing landscape, we see that that is not a very sustainable way of going at this. And truly, Nigeria has made a lot of progress in terms of elimination of several of the NTDs, because for decades, communities have received these medications, but there's still some way to go. And unfortunately, we haven't quite seen a lot of commitment from the government in terms of providing counterpart funding for these donations that come into the country. And so if the government doesn't throw their weight, I am afraid that most of the gains that have been recorded on account of the donations that we have been receiving to ensure that the people in the rural area get the required treatment that they need will not be, we will not be sustained. And we may, in the next decade or so, go back to where we started, which will be very, very unfortunate. Right. So we're hoping that the government will rise up to their responsibility for providing basic health care to the communities, especially in the rural areas, so that those who require these medicines can get these medicines when they need to get these medicines. And we will be far gone in terms of eliminating trachoma and other illnesses.
A fine place to anchor, and it reminds me of where we started the program of the call on the Federal Ministry of Health to ensure that partnership to strengthen the primary healthcare centers at the grassroots level. We must thank you very much, Professor Joy Shaibu, the Director General, I believe, of Country Director of Sight Savers. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. And remember that today is World NTD Day. Please help us spread the word, because we want to unite, act, so that we can eliminate NTDs from Nigeria. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. So we have some bonuses before we leave, Kelly. Absolutely.
Just to walk you through our viewers, the trends we're looking at this hour before we go. Anthony Joshua, we hear, has finally broken silence following the tragic crash, a car accident in Nigeria that claimed the lives of 2 of his close friends and associates. I was also grateful in that video you see on your screen there to first responders, the state government, and the presidency for their support. I saw a picture of Mr. President paying a personal visit to Anthony Joshua in the hospital. So it's good to see him back. It's good to see him. We had seen several videos or pictures of him coming back, but this is the first time he's had to make an address. So it was good to see our champion back. We can only wish him the best. There are questions as to, is he going to go back to the ring? We'll only have to give him some time. I'm sure this is really very hard for him.
Our thoughts and our prayers are with Anthony Joshua, who suffered a tragedy of monumental proportions. So, you know, recalling the death of his friends, those were very close friends of his, and you know, surviving that accident. We're grateful that he survived, but we wonder the, you know, emotions that he would have to deal with after that event. We can only imagine, but we'll pray for him. We'll continue to pray for him, that he returns stronger. We'll also have another report coming through. Former governor of Kogi State, the lion of...
the white lion.
The white lion.
Please don't miss that. This is the white lion.
Yes.
I take it very personally.
Yes, he secured permission, rather, to travel to Mecca on pilgrimage from the Federal High Court. I remember he's been tried on allegations of corruption.
And bribery.
And finally?
Well, finally, before we go, Nigeria Super Eagles winger Samuel Chukwueze, on a sad note, has lost his mom following a brief illness. This isn't good for us at all. This is not good news at all. The captain of the Super Eagles as well, Wilfred Ndidi, lost his father, I think, earlier in the week. And now Samuel Chukwueze, who was in the middle of the storm when he missed that penalty kick there, has also lost his mother now. Our thoughts, our prayers are with Samuel and his family.
And indeed, the entire Super Eagles.
And the entire Super Eagles,
And this is where we drop the anchor for the Friday edition and indeed for the entire week. Thank you so much for being our companion. We'll be back again same time next week. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, because it's a Friday, if you have to drink anything, it has to be water while driving. I'm Kelly Egiga. Bye now.